the attic. Here at the attic, heaven meets the earth. Our guests have unusual and supernatural experiences with God. Welcome to At the Attic. Today our guest is Leszek Korzeniecki, addiction prevention specialist, author of many Christian books and a conference speaker. He has spoken to hundreds of thousands of people talking on addiction and occult. He has spoken in churches, in schools and in prisons all over Poland. His knowledge is very practical and he has acquired it during many difficult and dark experiences. You travel all over Poland and you teach about occult. Can you tell us what occult actually is? Occult is a very wide phenomenon. It would be hard to define it in a few sentences. We see that many new forms of occult surface, especially nowadays in the 21st century. Actually, today occult is everywhere. In the past, it was just some kind of magic knowledge that was practiced by a small group of magicians and witches. The majority of society wasn't interested in it very much. Nowadays, occult became a profitable industry. We are offered horoscopes, feng shui, yoga exercises, techniques of people manipulating, NLP techniques. All of this is on the edge of magic. What about innocent yoga? Does it also have occult background? All I can say is deeply rooted in my Christian worldview. In my opinion, we should understand yoga, taking into consideration how it is understood in its original context. Yoga was not created as a set of gymnastic exercises. Yoga was created as a ritual consisting of certain movements, the aim of which was surrendering to the power of the snake. If a person starts practicing yoga, he or she might unknowingly get involved in certain spirituality just by accepting certain tradition unconsciously. Have you heard about the demon possession cases resulting from practicing yoga? I heard many stories of people who practiced breathing, meditating or movement techniques connected with yoga, and that caused serious mental or spiritual crisis. We can say that you are one of the few who experienced the true colors of occult, who experienced how mighty is the power that stands behind it. Can you describe your experiences? I was a frustrated teenager, a frustrated punk, and I knew that I already gambled my life away. One day I started searching for something that would be worth living. It was in early 80s. Kaszpirowski was on TV on daily basis. You could get more and more books on occult in bookstores. Everybody was fascinated by this. I didn't read too much about it, but one day I spoke into the air, saying that I want the powers that stand behind it to come and visit me. And it happened. There was a sequence of events that resulted in me getting tarot cards. There was also a spirit that would come to me, answer me, and take me out of my body. When I was out of my body, he taught me different things. He told me how I can become a clairvoyant. I started experimenting and things began to happen. So there was some spiritual being visiting you. Did it introduce itself to you? The spirit that visited me told me a symbolic name, but he said it was only a symbol. He told me his name was Prometheus, and that is the role he is to play in my life. He told me that he wanted to bring me light from a distant world, and the light is inaccessible to people in a normal way. The Spirit caused that you left your body in some way? He initiated so-called astral projections, right? How did it happen? What did you feel when it happened? The first experience was shocking for me, because I felt totally paralyzed, a little bit like electrocuted. A few seconds later, I saw my body from above. I was really scared because I heard about such experiences happening only during clinical death. I panicked and concluded that the paralysis and pain I felt a while ago must have been some kind of illness, and now I am dying. I freaked out. When I traveled a few hundred meters away from my home, I was sure I was dead.
Znalazłem się kilkaset metrów od domu, byłem przeświadczony o tym, że jestem martwy. Za jakiś czas ten duch powrócił.
In a while, the Spirit came back, caught me and placed me back into my body without any warning. The same thing happened every 2 or 3 days, and each time it seemed to me that it doesn't make any sense. However, a few weeks later, not long after the first experience, actually it could be only 2 weeks later, the Spirit took me out of my body and started speaking to me. During one of our conversations, the Spirit told me, "You're special, you're chosen, you are unusual. You can experience things others can only dream about. However, you still think about ordinary, down-to-earth stuff."
Ty ciągle myślisz o jakichś takich przyziemnych, małych sprawach. I on zaczął wykładać mi taką ideę na dzisiaj.
He then presented me some kind of nirvana philosophy. He showed me that the life I was created for should be void of any love, hatred, or any other feeling, that I should become an empty vessel, enabling the flow of the spiritual world.
Dla tego świata duchowego.
A few spectacular events happened, but the most dramatic thing happened when a girl came to me to conduct a tarot reading. I did it, and at one point, one of the cards started bleeding. We then stopped the reading. I collected all other cards from the table, leaving only this one. We both were looking stunned at what was happening. It was inexplicable to her. It was also inexplicable to me. I knew it was some weird manifestation. I knew that we both were having some kind of hallucination or projection at the same time. I didn't believe that it was real blood, but we both were looking at the blood flowing out of wounds of the painted fish. It was a shocking experience. Finally, we picked up the card. I was holding one edge and she was holding the other, and we were looking at the blood on it. Did you say anything? Yes, I told her, "I don't want you to be afraid, but I don't understand what is happening." I tried to calm her down, but she was so shocked that I didn't do very well. But finally we stood up and I walked her home because it was night. I walked her to her apartment. I almost had to push her in. I was walking through the forest at night. It was dark. I was thinking, and I had an impression that from now on, it's going to be bad. It's no longer me who controls the occult in my life, but it's the occult that has been controlling me for a long time. At that time, I decided that I quit. I wanted to have time to think it over. I didn't mean to quit occult forever. I just wanted to have a fresh approach to it after some time of spiritual abstinence. After I made that decision, a very rough process of mental tormenting started. A spirit would come to me, it would paralyze my body and place horrific hallucinations in my mind. I started hearing voices, and I had had all symptoms that a psychiatrist would diagnose as a severe case of schizophrenia. I felt someone touching me. Sometimes something even attacked me and hit me. After such encounters, I had bruises all over my body. Such terrible and dreadful torment started that most of events that happened during that time are too atrocious to talk about. One night I woke up. I felt that something is pressing against my chest. I opened my eyes and I saw my girlfriend's head on my chest. It was cut off, her face crushed by a hammer. It was terribly mutilated. I was helpless. I couldn't do anything, as if I was paralyzed. I was staring at the piece of smashed meat on my chest, and it took hours. I couldn't move. I heard voices. The spirits would come and call me names. Sometimes I heard voices coming from the first floor. I live on the second. I heard screams of my mother or younger sister. I heard that somebody was abusing them and they screamed, calling me to help. I was paralyzed and I couldn't get up. I heard those screams multiple times. Sometimes it lasted for 6 hours every night. It was a nightmare. I had strange hallucinations. Sometimes I would wake up on a table and I would see old women walking around and doing witchcraft. I would wake up in some old cottage full of herbs. There was horrible stench around and I couldn't move. Those visions would come every night, and they were accompanied by even more cruel methods of tormenting me. One night I went to bed downstairs, and as soon as I lay down, I was immediately paralyzed and I saw that there was a corpse hanging over my bed. Let's imagine that there is someone who has access to every nerve in your body. He can send an impulse from every nerve. He has access to every emotion, to every bit of imagination, and he can generate everything that dread the most. That's exactly what happened to me. I was totally confused. I felt as if I was in the hands of the most scary pervert. I was totally helpless, and I was hoping that death might bring relief from my condition.
To, o czym myślałem w tamtym okresie z nadzieją, to o tym, że być może śmierć jest wyzwoleniem z takiego stanu.
Those demons tormented you terribly. I'm sure you were looking for some way out. Didn't you try to go to some kind of witch doctor or exorcist? Or maybe you tried to deal with it yourself.
Generalnie we wstępnej fazie tych przeżyć
In the beginning,
po prostu
I had a
załamanie.
kind of a
Czułem się
breakdown.
bardzo oszukany
I felt
przez
cheated by my
swojego
teacher
ducha
spirit.
nauczyciela.
I had an
I
impression
wprawdzie
that when I
miałem
come
takie
back to
poczucie,
him,
że jeśli
all of
wrócę
this
z
will
powrotem,
stop.
to wszystko ustanie. Ale pomyślałem sobie, nie chcę do czegoś
But
takiego
I thought
wrócić.
I
Nie
don't
chcę
want
do
to come
czegoś
back to
takiego
someone
wrócić.
or something
Czułem
like
się
that.
bardzo zbuntowany.
I was rebellious. I thought many times that death would be a solution.
Tak naprawdę często myślałem o tym, że śmierć byłaby rozwiązaniem. Zastanawiałem się, czy istnieje
I was
jakiś
wondering
Bóg,
if there is any
który
God that
może
really
istnieć
exists,
naprawdę,
and at the
a
same
jednocześnie
time
jest
is against
całkowicie
everything
przeciwny
I'm going through.
temu wszystkiemu, co przeżywam. Więc
The only person I could
jedyna
think of
osoba,
was
która
the
mi
God
przyszła
of
na
Israel.
myśl, to Bóg Izraela. Na szczęście w tamtym czasie nie
Luckily,
wiedziałem, że
at
to ten
that
sam
time,
Bóg, co
I
Bóg
didn't
chrześcijan.
know that the God of Israel is
Postanowiłem
also the
pomodlić
God
się
of
do
Christians.
Boga Żydów.
So I decided to pray to the God
To
of Jews.
wiązało się dla mnie
It was great
z
effort for me.
wielkim wysiłkiem.
I was trying to open my mouth to pray to God of Jews, asking for help, but I couldn't. It might have lasted for as long as 2 hours. Did anything stop you from this? Was it a physical blockage that stopped you from saying those words, or you couldn't make that decision?
To było jak paraliż.
No, it was like paralysis. I had made the decision before I tried to pray, but when I wanted to do it, I was paralyzed. I couldn't open my mouth. I was depressed, demotivated. I felt it all didn't make sense, because even though I made that decision to pray to God, it was too big an effort. However, after some time, I managed to say finally, Jehovah, the God of Jews, if you exist, if you care about me, reveal yourself to me and help me. I didn't realize how quickly the answer would come. Soon after, Agatha came to me. She gave me the New Testament, saying that she opened it in a random place and she read, "Those who do evil magic will have a place in the lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death." She said, "I don't know what it means, but I know that you should read this book."
I powiedziała, nie wiem, co to znaczy, ale wiem, że na pewno powinieneś przeczytać tę książkę.
When I started reading the New Testament, I didn't believe in it. I didn't agree with it, or I even didn't understand what I was reading. However, I couldn't deny the fact that a relief came when I was reading it. So I read it as often as I could. I spent entire weeks reading it in quest for relief.
Przez kolejne tygodnie tak naprawdę cały czas siedziałem z Nowym Testamentem w rękach, szukając
What happened after that?
ulgi dla siebie.
Finally, I read a passage in Mark's Gospel where it is written that believers will cast out demons in the name of Jesus. I thought, if this is true, I am certainly a person who needs deliverance. So I decided to look for believers who could cast demons out of me.
Ja jestem osobą, która potrzebuje uwolnienia od demonów i podjąłem decyzję, że będę szukał takiego uwolnienia, że będę szukał wierzących ludzi, którzy będą mogli wyrzucić ze mnie demony.
Łatwo ci było ich znaleźć?
I have to say that I encountered more obstacles than I could expect. I talked to 5 priests, but none of them understood this subject.
Księżmi, z których żaden nie wydawał się w ogóle rozumieć tego tematu.
I went to the parish house. I knocked on the door and the priest opened. He asked me into the hallway and we started chatting. He asked what I came for. I said that the story is a little complicated, but to make a long story short, I took drugs, later I got involved in Satanism and occult, and I got demon-possessed. Now I have serious problems with demons. Later I started reading the Bible and now I understand that it was all evil and I want to make myself clean of all those things and that I am tormented by demons. He asked me why I told him the story. So I said, when I found out that believers are going to cast out demons in Jesus' name, I was wondering who I could turn to, and you are the only person I could think of.
Jezusa będą wyrzucać demony, to zastanawiałem się, do kogo mógłbym pójść i był ksiądz jedyną osobą, o której pomyślałem, że mogłaby to spełniać.
He burst with laughter and asked, "What jerk told you that rubbish?" I was totally confused. I started wondering if I'm talking to the right person. I said, "It's written at the end of Mark's Gospel. Jesus said that believers are going to cast out demons in His name. And I have demons and I need a believer who will help me." Then I had an idea that I could pray myself. I had prayed before and I received the New Testament. It opened something new. It didn't solve my problems entirely, but it gave me hope. So I prayed again. God, if you have people who could help me, please let me meet them. That's how I met Paweł. He was my schoolmate, but I was expelled from that school and our paths diverged. In the meantime, he gave his life to Jesus. When I met him and asked how it's going, he said that everything was great. He got converted, he was reading the Bible, and he asked about me. I told him that I read the Bible too, and maybe I was even getting converted, but it wasn't good at all. He asked me why, so I said, "Because I am demon-possessed." First he laughed at it, but a while later, when he realized it was not a joke, he started looking for help. He called all his friends to pray for me. Later he set up a meeting when people prayed for my deliverance directly.
Później zorganizował spotkanie, na którym modlono się o moje uwolnienie.
What was the result of the prayer?
Jakie były rezultaty tej modlitwy?
I was afraid that some dramatic manifestations will happen during the meeting, because when I read the New Testament, I encountered all those dramatic descriptions. Demons living crying loud, all kinds of manifestations take place, so I thought that similar things would happen to me. However, nothing like that happened. The man who was present at the meeting said, "You have to leave in Jesus' name because he's not yours. He belongs to Christ." When he spoke those words, I found myself in total darkness for 3 seconds. When I emerged out of it, I felt relief and a sense of freedom. Before that prayer, my condition had been so horrible that even before the meeting, I had been wondering how long I managed to survive in a state like that. I had to fight to survive every next minute, and the fight was unbearable.
Zastanawiałem się nad tym, jak długo jeszcze będę w stanie wytrzymać taki rodzaj życia.
However, freedom came to me after this prayer. Things have changed. The torment didn't come back. My mental, emotional, and spiritual condition changed as a result of this one prayer. The painful things didn't come back. How did you like the new reality? I felt really free. I thought, I need to thank God. I wanted to express it. I took a breath, I looked up. I was really confused at that time, but I knew that my words were an expression of what was inside of me. I said, "God, I don't know if a man like me can say such things to a God like you. But after all I have seen you do for me, after all I have read about your Son, it seems to me that I start to love you."
Powiedziałem, Boże, nie wiem, czy taki człowiek jak ja może mówić takie rzeczy do takiego Boga jak Ty, ale przez wszystko to, co widziałem, że dla mnie zrobiłeś i przez wszystko
When I said
to, co
those
czytam
words,
o Twoim
something has
synu, wydaje
changed.
mi się, że
And it
zaczynam
was a
Ciebie
much
kochać.
bigger change than the one that happened a few hours before, when I was delivered.
To coś się zmieniło.
Suddenly I looked around and it seemed that the world looked different.
Niż miało to miejsce
I acted like a child. I stopped and kicked the road asphalt. I started touching trees around. I asked myself what had changed, because everything seemed to be
W
different.
ogóle poczułem się jak dziecko. Zatrzymałem się na drodze, zacząłem tupać w asfalt, zacząłem obmacywać drzewa, które rosły przy drodze i zadawałem sobie pytanie, co się
Then I
zmieniło,
understood that
bo w ogóle
something
wszystko
changed
wydawało
in
się
me.
inne.
I
w tym
became a
momencie,
different person. I was overwhelmed
zacząłem
by
rozumieć, że
indescribable
zmieniło
sense
się
of
coś we
acceptance
mnie,
and being
że ja
loved by
stałem się
God.
kimś innym.
I felt it for many, many hours. It seemed that the presence of God, His care for me, His love and His acceptance were so evident and tangible that I could feel it in the air.
Wiele, wiele godzin. Wydawało się, że Boża obecność, Jego troska, miłość, akceptacja
This experience was incredibly amazing, and I was sure of one thing after this experience. I knew that although I don't know what it means, I want to spend the rest of my life serving God.
Że choć nie wiem, co to znaczy, to wiem, że chcę resztę życia przeżyć służąc Bogu.